So I didn't quite make the cutoff. This isn't going to be a 3-day vlog. Had I slept another hour, it would have been. I've only been up for a few minutes. That's kind of the. It's the weather. I mean, I could have been up for quite a while longer. I think if the weather hadn't just knocked me right out. Even with the stomach ache, like I lay down and I was lying staring at the ceiling for like an hour. But in the end, there wasn't really. I know what happens when that stomach ache comes in. It's the weather, and there's not anything I can do except lie on my back and wait it out. I think there's another day like that near the end of next week. But I should be okay for a few days anyways. And then there's an after effect too, right? It's not just I have to lie down, it's then I have to sleep it off. Again, the doctors tell me I'm crazy, but there has to be some physical effect of something, some kind of difference in pressure. I don't know. But I'm looking at the Wisconsin results. I didn't see things come in, but that's the difference right there. That's where she would be expected to cheat, and it does not look as though she did. So that's an interesting twist. It seems to suggest that this is something that they can be turned up and down. She can. See, what I wasn't sure about was whether or not those early ballots whether or not those early ballots were like already sent and it was like there was nothing you could do to turn them around or what, right? But you might expect her to cheat there. But I mean, it was really, and Madison's one of those cities that's, you don't. I'm just looking at, you would expect a higher turnout amongst Democrats in Wisconsin. I'm just looking here. Yeah, there was. Twice as many. Okay. They're not there. See, that's interesting. Yeah. Sure. Well, you can see where the Republicans are expected to do well, and it's not. Yeah, it's not in Madison or Wisconsin or Milwaukee, it's for sure. Okay, but I mean that's Madison is very liberal. In fact, she may have given herself an extra 20,000 votes there. It wouldn't surprise me. But if she did stuff ballots in Milwaukee, it looks like she toned it down a little, right? I mean, if you compare that to or maybe they just haven't been counted yet. That would be traumatic. Just trying to see, like, if you compare it to like some of the other counties where I think there were some issues. Well, like that's where I'm closest to is Wayne County, right? So, like, right. I don't really think she was playing with the votes here or there, but there. I mean, that's a lead that doesn't make any sense when you look at anywhere else. She didn't come anywhere close to 60% anywhere, right? And I mean, you can look at those numbers and say that. Um, but, I mean, would she get there 51? No, she must have gotten at least 51 somewhere else. Yeah. I mean, they're not really consequential counties. Um, she did still do, but I mean, if you flip those results, it's pretty close, right? So, um, I don't know. Maybe she did. But if she did, then it was pretty muted. And like I said, that would suggest that what she did was she looked at, and I say she, I mean her team. I don't, or the party or something, right? Um, looked at the results and said, okay, we can't fake this, um, indicating that she turned down or toned down all of these stuffed ballot boxes. Show estimated remaining votes. I'm sure that'll be. See, there is some chance that she could win that precinct as well, but I think that from what we've seen so far, there's really little those numbers could, yeah. I think those numbers are going to tighten after all at the end, but this, I mean, he's got, it's 44 to 28. I think he's going to get a little closer than that. My final prediction was pretty much a split, which would be like, you know, it was giving myself a large amount of error between like 47 to 53 on either side, right? So, I think that it might get closer to that in the end. We'll find out. But that 15 delegate cities set to win. Hey, it gets him a little closer. I said he was about 30 behind where he wanted to be. If he can win 10 in Wyoming and 15 here, then that brings him a lot closer. But I think in the end, it might be more like 10 here and 10 there, and then it's. I mean, it still takes him a little bit. I didn't bank on him winning. I at no point thought he would win big in Wisconsin. So, this is no doubt pretty plotting theater, isn't it? I'm actually literally pulling the sleep out of my eyes, but it does not appear as though she stuffed ballots in Milwaukee. You can draw your own conclusions to that, but I'll have to see if that's a kind of a one-off scenario to kind of hide or trail kind of thing, or if that's an acknowledgement that something was really wrong, and maybe even somebody resolving some problems that were not intended by the leadership team behind Clinton. I said a few times I don't have any evidence that Clinton herself is stuffing or ordering the ballots to be stuffed. And I've tried to point out a few times that you can't do something like this unless the whole party is behind it, right? So, I mean, who knows? Maybe somebody on Clinton's team said, stop doing this. It's a possibility too, right? All I can do is speculate regarding what's actually going on inside Team Clinton. But it has been pretty clear for a while that she has been stuffing boxes in urban areas. It doesn't look like she stuffed boxes in Milwaukee, and that might be the difference. That might be the difference tonight. I said I wasn't going to be doing any more vlogging, but I am going to see if I can. I might just skip the cuts and just do the main vlogs for the next little bit. I've got something uploading. I'm going to get something to eat, and I don't have any plans tonight except really moving forward a lot with the archiving. And well, I'm gonna need to go out tomorrow. Pick up some pills. Actually get a blood test done. So I think it's important that I eat now, because I want to go in the morning to do that. I need to get the second part of my tax. I only got half the tax package. I do that every year. Forget to get the other half. So yeah, that's what I'm doing today. And these are exit polls. I'm always skeptical about exit polls. It's just there's a very strong bias as to who's going to stop and talk to you. It's not. It's you could say the same thing about a phone, right? But at least if you're going out of your way to actually talk to somebody, then it's different than just being there. And people that won't talk to you will include people that are of specific, persecuted ethnic groups, or this is not the first time that the exit polls have not aligned well with the pre-polling in terms of the ethnic breakdown. It was the same thing in Illinois, and that again makes me a little bit skeptical of the results. Pre-polling suggested that he was winning blacks in Wisconsin. Pre-polling suggested that it was pretty close in Illinois, but then when you get the exit polls, it's the same split every time unless exit polls. She gets 70-30 everywhere. It's like there's no variation at all, right? And it's very hard to contemplate how black people are this homogenous block that doesn't make any sense unless the racists are right. I can't even contemplate that. So I mean I'm very skeptical about this. I don't think that that's right. I think that the numbers are going to be a little bit closer than that. It's just, that's what the exit polls are, right? It's, for whatever reason, it seems to be that liberal blacks don't really want to talk to the exit pollsters. But this is something else that was pretty much all the polling was consistent in having her winning by about 5 points amongst Democrats. And that came out of about a 50-50 split. And nobody had quite that much. So as skeptical as I'm going to be about the exit polls, it does seem to be that even if we don't take that particularly seriously regarding the even if we say, okay, she probably did win amongst registered Democrats, it seems as though there were a lot more independents out. 30% of the vote being independents. That's a lot. That's the same thing that happened in Michigan. So it looks like it's turnout, right? That's what I've been saying. That's what Bernie's been saying. Is that the only way to really overwhelm the this situation is just get as many people out as you can. Somebody else I'll check. I mean, were there a lot of voter irregularities? Maybe Missouri. Sorry, maybe Wisconsin took some extra steps to make sure that people could actually vote. Right. That might be another. If there weren't a lot of people told that they can't vote, then you would get that extra bump as well. So I may have been a little bit extra pessimistic. At the end of the day, it that doesn't really make any difference, right? We'll see. I had to point something else out though. That's the number of Republican votes. That's the number of Democratic votes. So strangely, there have been more votes cast for the Republicans in Wisconsin. That might suggest that a lot of Hillary voters decided they wanted to vote for Ted Cruz in order to beat Donald Trump. That's about the only way to make sense of that. And it's well, I couldn't see that transferring over into the general, not in Wisconsin. Well, I suggested that when you factor in early voters and voter suppression, it should be a delegate tie. I also questioned whether she'd have the gall to bother in Wisconsin, but concluded it probably wasn't reversible anyways. The numbers in Milwaukee do not appear to be as suspicious as the numbers in Wayne or Cook County or in downtown Boston. I think people should have expected it to be close, and it is. Further, whatever stories about suppression are coming out, it seems like a lot of independent voters found a way to cast a ballot, so my corrections have proven unnecessary. This is not the first state where pre-polling amongst blacks is inconsistent with exit polling. I think it may be worthwhile to question whether there's a bias at play. The numbers demonstrate a strange lack of variation, despite wild variation in polling. The polling suggested that Clinton should win blacks handily in Michigan. The exit polling was 70-30. The polling suggested that it should be pretty close in Illinois, but exit polling was 70-30. And some polling suggested Sanders might even win blacks in Wisconsin, yet the exit polling was still 70-30. It takes a certain mindset to do an exit poll. I don't want to speculate too heavily other than to suggest that the exit polling seems suspect. When you have a situation where you do all kinds of polling and the numbers are all over the place, but then you do a specific type of poll, I mean, it's the clearest example of it's a classic bias situation. The data doesn't seem to suggest at all that the blacks are leaning towards one candidate at such a high level, at least not in the North. In the South, yes, but in the South, whites are leaning heavily as well. So why is it that we're seeing these constant results in the exit polls, right? So I don't want to speculate too heavily other than to suggest that the exit polling does seem suspect. I mean, if the polls were consistent, fine, but they're not. They're just not, right? And there's no particularly logical reason for this racial split either. If anything, there's a better argument that it's irrational to vote for Clinton if you're black, given her history. The polls suggesting more variation make more sense, but it's prudent to look for some kind of real bias, like an actual real thing, before you start concluding that some centralized body refuses to let the number slip below 70. Although, of course, as one would have to read between those lines, there is some suggestion that this is yet another inconsistency. My conclusion is that I was pessimistic about the process and revised numbers down due to perceived corruption by the party. That corruption appears to have either both or not been present and or, this is one of those claused sentences here. Okay. The corruption appears to have either or both not been present and or overwhelmed by turnout. So either there wasn't any corruption or it was overwhelmed by turnout, or both. I did point out that that's the only tactic, but that the party would go out of its way to counter it. So, I knew that, the way to beat, the cheating is to get lots and lots of people out. But it seemed like the way the party was going to react to that was going to be just to stuff more and more ballots, right? But it seems like it didn't happen in Wisconsin. None of the same signals that I saw elsewhere are showing up here in Wisconsin for whatever reason. Now, that doesn't imply anything at all about previous or future states, right? So just because I think that there wasn't any cheating in Wisconsin doesn't mean that I think all of a sudden that Illinois was free of cheating, right? And the numbers may still tighten too. It turns out they didn't really. And just because, I think that it was clean in Wisconsin doesn't mean I think it'll be clean in New York, right? Regarding the delegate math, I always assumed a virtual split in Wisconsin, and given that you're looking at plus or minus 10 delegates over a wide range of outcomes, almost any conceivable result would really be equivalent. I think they're still figuring out Washington, but I said close to 200 going into New York. If you can get 10 in Wyoming and more than 10 in Wisconsin, then you're looking at 200 to 210 going into New York, or between 200 and 210. Worked out that he got 10 in Wisconsin, so he's got to get, I think it's less than 6 going into Wyoming, and he can do that if he can keep it under 210. He's on the right path, but he does still have to win New York, and he has to win New York convincingly. I also want to point out that the Republicans currently have 100,000 more votes than the Democrats do in Wisconsin. Has Wisconsin joined the dark side? It's not likely. More likely is that Clinton supporters are interfering with the Republican primary process to try and stop Trump, or even just set up a favorable matchup for themselves. I'm going to again point out, though, that there was sufficient polling done in Wisconsin to have caught a funny outcome, if one was attempted. Maybe that had something to do with the apparent cleanliness of the results there. Or maybe it's just Wisconsin living up to its reputation. I don't know. Who knows? I know that I'd like to see more polling done at the same frequency for future states. Please. I know that people like graphs. It helps them understand things. So let's look at a few graphs here. That is the time plot of the vote in Wisconsin this evening. So you can see that, it started off with Sanders around 57%, fluctuated a little, and then stabilized around 56%. You can see that if you look at that, there wasn't a lot of movement. It was around, 2 or 3% around the end result, right? So you could have called it easily from the initial results, and that's what the idea is, right? You get a big enough sample, and then you say, well, it's going to be roughly flat from there on in, right? That's Milwaukee. That's Wisconsin, where I think the results were relatively fair. Okay, if there was any cheating, it doesn't look like it really had much of an effect, right? I mean, there's going to be cheating in every election, but this doesn't look like it was massive. Now, let's compare that to Ohio, where the initial results came in. Clinton was well over 70%. I believe it was actually about 77%. Okay? And then it slowly, it quite quickly, broke to a much closer level, and then it stayed there flat, right? And it ended up being, 56%? Yeah, 56%. But you can see that the initial was much bigger, and that there wasn't really, that there was a small amount of fluctuation here, but not really, right? So that dropped by like 20% from the initial results, right? And what were the initial results? The initial results were the early ballots, the absentee ballots, the ones they were counted first, right? And it came up on the models as initial results. That's what it said, right? That's not a chart that somebody that wants to see a fair election wants to see. That is a classic signal of ballot box stuffing. If you take that down a little, then you see it gets a lot closer. Now, I'll say it again. I figured that Clinton would win in Ohio. I just figured it would be down about 5%, right? And if you take it, if you split about 50,000 votes, which is what um, you want to think is the difference there. Well, let's not even say that. But if you can take it down to about 650 to a 550, that's or maybe a little bit closer than that. A little more than 6, a little less than 6. That's about more like what I was suggesting, right? You can see something similar in Arizona, although it's not quite as pronounced, right? A little over 60. It comes down. What did it end up being? 57? Yeah. Again, though, it's just an initial bump, right? I think most people would assign the problems in Arizona more to rigging. They never got those 7 counties, did they? That's very strange to me. That's where I would have expected Sanders to do the best, was there. But you see the difference, right? This is what you would expect a fair election to look like, which is very little difference between the early ballots and the final result. And this is what you would expect a rigged election to look like, which is with a huge bump at the start from early ballots, and then it comes down a little bit. Let's see what if Illinois gets the same kind of graph. Yeah, sort of. I think the Cook County results were a little late, right? So you see that bump there, early results, and then comes down, right? It's about 5%, which is about what we would think is the difference. They got all the counting in. She won more states than it looked like she was going to in the end. Either way, you see the same basic pattern in all of these places, right? Is that he wins in most of the places outside of the cities, but there's that one. I mean, what is it? That's almost 100,000 votes, right? And he lost by 35 or 45. No, 35. Yeah. So, I mean, if you figure that she stuffed about 50,000 votes there, which is about what those numbers here suggest, then that's your difference, right? And that's about the difference I would have suggested, right? Actually, in Illinois, I was projecting a little bit higher than that. It was about a 10-point difference, but you see what I'm getting at. What you see here is consistent in state after state, and it is not something that you expect to see in a fair election, right? In a fair election, you expect it to look, a little bit more noise, but more important is that the distance, right? The distance is very small. It didn't really change much. Not, this huge amount and then it comes down. Huge bump and then it comes down. Where else did that happen? Did that happen in Missouri? Yeah, look at Missouri. Right? Huge bump and then it comes down. and it's always in the same direction, right? There's nowhere where Sanders starts off with a huge bump and then it comes down. It's always Clinton that starts off with a huge bump. What was it like in North Carolina? Yeah, look at that. 65 and then down to 50, was it 57? 55. She did better in this area of North Carolina than I think anybody expected her to. Or maybe people just weren't really paying as close attention to the demographics that maybe they should have. You know, they said North Carolina, Southern Black. I think this is maybe a little bit different than the rest of, you know. But, and she didn't get, yeah, there weren't any blowout wins anywhere either. That's a good sign for North Carolina anyways. If you're in North Carolina, you might be exiting the Dark Ages. And look at this. Suggest North Carolina might even be competitive in the general. Well, Obama won North Carolina. The first time, anyways. Did it even happen in Florida? I don't think anybody really doubted Florida, but is it the same? Yeah. Well, Florida's a different, that's a different shape. Florida doesn't fit into this particular category. Same thing happened in Michigan. Actually, it won't happen in Michigan because Wayne County didn't come until late. In fact, it's not showing it either. It would be different though because it would have worked the other way around. Wayne County took forever. The only other place I wanted to check was Massachusetts. There's no, yeah, it's not there either. So that's a metric that the New York Times only recently put in. What if they wanted to tell us something there, huh? Interesting. But I mean, that's, what you see from there. And why the results that we see in Wisconsin are exciting on multiple ways. Like I say, it might just be the fact that there was a lot of polling done in Wisconsin, which really made a big difference, clearly, in terms of the party's approach to doing this. So, keep doing the polling. That's important. But it is hard to predict an unfair election. You have to cut me some slack. You have to try to guess where they're going to cheat and by how much. Wisconsin seems to mostly be clean, okay, but how do you guess that? And if you just go by the numbers, you get called out when they cheat. I've at least been clear about this the whole time, but by not cheating in Wisconsin, they've given me a prop to use. The New York Times has a great little graph in its coverage called How the Vote Came In. Graphs are great for people that don't think in math, so let's take a look at them. And I went over this already. You can rewind back. This is just the written part that came in a little bit later. So if you look at Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois, you're going to see these huge leads that start off at the top and then they fall down. Right? by 20% in Ohio or Missouri. It's a very, very suspicious signal. In fact, it's the classic signal for stuffing ballots. But then if you look at the ones in Wisconsin, you see a little bit of fluctuation, but it's just a few percentage points, and that's much more like what you expect to see in a fair election. And so I would argue that these graphs are enough on their own to demonstrate that the election is unfair. And once you establish as much, trying to figure out what's going to happen gets very complicated. The tactic we've seen is that she tends to rig the big cities, right? So I would have expected her to quote-unquote win by about 50,000 votes in Milwaukee. Then you expect them to run out of ballots and other such things in the counties, which works as voter suppression, right? If that had happened, if she would have had that extra 50,000 votes in Milwaukee, and there would have been a little bit more suppression out in the counties, then the result that I had predicted would have actually occurred. But that just did not happen in Wisconsin, right? I can look at numbers, I can look at patterns, I can't tell you whether you're going to cheat or not, right? I'm a mathematician, I'm not a clairvoyant, again, right? But could it be the polling? See, I don't know. But it might have been. So I think you should keep doing it. Yeah, the media never updated the Washington numbers. That's sneaky. By my count, the current breakdown of pledged delegates is Clinton 1,303 and Sanders 1,087. There's some error involved, okay? But that means that the difference is around 216. If you can get at least 6 in Wyoming, then that's under 210 going into New York. And he'll probably get a little bit more than that, which is close enough to be on target, okay? But I need to reiterate, the path I've presented indicates he needs to win at least 50 delegates in New York. That means he's looking at 60% as a minimum target. Although this guy won't fall if it's 57 either, it just means he needs to win even bigger in California. You do get why this doesn't end before June 7th, I gather. But he needs to win, and by more than 55%. He needs to be aiming for 60%. I went down this path for the following reasons. The first is about the only way he's going to get the bump. He needs to win the rest of the calendar by the margins he needs anyways. Alright? He had to win in Massachusetts, and he didn't. He had to win in Illinois as big, and he didn't. He had to split in Arizona, and he didn't, and etc., etc. If he can't win New York, he can't. Like he's running out of places to win, right? He better win in New York, and he better win by a convincing margin. And the second is that that's not inconceivable at all. That's a very plausible, realistic goal. Bernie Sanders winning in New York, I mean, it's, to use the baseball analogy, it's a hand and a glove, right? It fits very well. It fits far better than Hillary Clinton does. Now, I've pointed out repeatedly that I reject racial-based demographic modeling as racist, and I don't think Clinton has any kind of a meaningful home state advantage in New York either. She only picked New York because it was a safe seat. Nobody voted for Hillary Clinton. They voted for the Democrats. They could have run a bouquet of flowers and it would have won. And what did she do? She voted for an unpopular war, and then she went after video games. Her home state is Arkansas. And she thinks like a Midwestern conservative Democrat. Not like a New York liberal, okay? Conversely, New York is actually a pretty liberal place. It's not a middle of the road, Mississippi up, not a middle of the road up the Mississippi, kind of moderate, mostly conservative kind of place, which is where Clinton would do well. It's a off the wall, crazy liberals kind of place, right? And so it's somewhere that should really embrace what Sanders stands for. It should be his home turf, right? There's a caveat, and the caveat is that there's a lot of money in New York, right? New York primary is going to be about class and turnout. Clinton will do very well with wealthy Democrats, and the deadline to register has already passed. So was he able to register enough voters to overwhelm the old guard? If he can keep going, okay? He's got to get all these people out, and they got to go and do it, right? If he can't, it's time to start organizing the anti-war marches and labor activists against Clinton. And, there's not really any use in waiting until the election's done. They might as well just go out and start organizing right away. For what it's worth, I don't see any reason to be particularly convinced that he can. It's great that we made it this far and everything, and I'm still rooting for him. I've been rooting for him the whole time and everything else. But you have to be realistic, and realistic means reading numbers. It's getting better. The numbers are coming closer together. He's still got 10 days. It's not done yet, but there's really not a lot of reason to think that he's going to do that um, in the amount of time that he had. If he had 6 months, and in fact 6 months from now, but at this particular point, it's hard to see how he can make up that much ground that fast. But we'll see. If there's anywhere you can do it, it's New York, right? I think he can at least split. I think that and what a split means is five one way or the other, right? 5% one way or the other, right? So we'll see how that works out. But to be serious about moving forwards, he has to have a convincing win in one of the most liberal states in the country. He has to pull that out, and if he can't, then what's he doing, right? He can't win all the delegates in California. That said, I don't think he should quit either. He's been saying he wants to go into the end because he wants everybody to vote. I agree. He should, and nobody should tell him to stop either. So yeah, that's that. I'm not going to talk much about New York moving forward. It is what it is, and Godspeed, but good luck.